He jumped into the pit to save the alien child, then woke with a dragon mark burning. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The mining colony on Vesher 3 was supposed to be Marcus Dean's fresh start, a place where nobody knew about his past failures or the family he'd left behind on Earth. Instead, he found himself staring into a bottomless pit that had just swallowed a child, and every instinct he possessed screamed at him to do something impossibly stupid. The celebration had been going strong for 3 hours when the ground opened up. The Visherii, the native species of this dusty world, had invited the human workers to their annual bonding festival, a tradition that went back thousands of years before humanity ever left their home planet. Marcus had attended reluctantly, nursing a cup of their fermented grain drink that tasted like battery acid mixed with cinnamon. He stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the Visherii children play near the ancient stone circle that marked the ceremonial grounds. The Visherii looked vaguely reptilian to human eyes, with scales that shimmered in shades of copper and bronze, and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. They stood upright on 2 legs, had 4-fingered hands, and communicated in a language that sounded like wind chimes mixed with distant thunder. The children were smaller versions of the adults, their scales softer and brighter, not yet weathered by the harsh desert sun. One of those children, a young Visherii named Kestra, had been chasing a glowing orb that floated just out of reach. The orb was part of the festival, one of dozens released to represent the souls of ancestors watching over the celebration. Kestra laughed as she ran, the sound like bells tinkling, and none of the adults noticed when she ventured too close to the forbidden zone, an area marked by weathered stones that the Visherii never approached. Marcus noticed. He had been watching her because she reminded him of his own daughter, the one he hadn't seen in 4 years, the one whose birthday messages he received but never had the courage to answer. Kestra had that same fearless energy, that absolute certainty that the world would catch her if she fell. The ground didn't just crack. It imploded. One moment, solid stone had been beneath Kestra's feet. The next, a perfect circle of earth collapsed into darkness, and the child's delighted laughter turned into a shriek of terror that cut through every other sound at the festival. Marcus was running before he made the conscious decision to move. Around him, Visherii adults turned toward the sound, their faces registering shock and horror. Someone shouted something in their language. Another person screamed. But Marcus was already at the edge of the pit, looking down into absolute darkness, hearing Kestra's cries echoing up from impossible depths. The rational part of his brain cataloged everything wrong with what he was about to do. He had no rope, no safety equipment, no idea how deep the pit went or what waited at the bottom. He had no training for cave rescues. He was 42 years old, overweight, and his knees hurt when he climbed stairs too quickly. This was suicide. Kestra's crying cut off abruptly, replaced by a wet coughing sound that made Marcus's blood freeze. He jumped. The fall seemed to last forever and no time at all. Marcus plummeted through complete darkness, the air rushing past him, his stomach lurching into his throat. He tried to orient himself, tried to prepare for impact, but there was nothing to see, nothing to grab, just the endless black and the certainty that he had made a catastrophically stupid decision. The landing drove every bit of air from his lungs. He hit something that gave beneath him, something that felt like sand or loose soil, and his left leg folded at an angle that made bright sparks of agony shoot through his entire body. He rolled, gasping, tasting blood and dust, and for several seconds could do nothing but lie there while his nervous system screamed damage reports from every extremity. Then he heard the whimpering. Small, frightened, close by. Marcus forced himself to move. His left leg was definitely broken, maybe in multiple places, and something was wrong with his ribs on the right side. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. But he crawled forward on his elbows, following the sound of Kestra's crying, until his hands found small, trembling scales. "Got you," Marcus said, his voice coming out as a rasp. "Got you, kid. You're okay." Kestra made a sound that might have been words in her language, but Marcus couldn't understand. He pulled her close, checking her over with hands that shook from shock and pain. She seemed mostly unhurt, maybe some scrapes and bruises, but she was breathing and moving. That was more than Marcus could say for himself. The darkness around them was absolute. Marcus tried to look up, to see the opening they'd fallen through, but saw nothing. Either they'd fallen too far, or the pit had somehow closed above them. Neither option was encouraging. He fumbled in his pocket for his work light, a small but powerful LED that every miner carried. His fingers were clumsy, and it took 3 tries to pull it out and activate it. When the light finally blazed to life, Marcus wished he'd stayed in the dark. They were in a cavern that stretched beyond the reach of his light in every direction. The ceiling, if there was one, was invisible in the gloom. But what he could see made his skin crawl. The walls weren't natural rock formations. They were carved, covered in intricate patterns and symbols that seemed to writhe in the moving shadows. And everywhere, scattered across the floor like discarded toys, were bones. Not human bones. These were massive, each one easily twice the size of Marcus's entire body. They had the general shape of animal skeletons, but wrong in ways his brain struggled to process. Too many joints. Skulls with eye sockets in configurations that made his head hurt to look at. Ribs that curved in impossible spirals. Kestra saw them too and pressed herself against Marcus, making small sounds of terror. "It's okay," Marcus lied, holding her close. "We're going to be okay. Someone will come for us." But as he said it, he knew it was unlikely. The Visharii avoided this area for a reason. Whatever ancient taboo surrounded this place, they might not be willing to break it, even for a child. And the human workers had no equipment for a deep rescue mission. They were miners, not spelunkers. Marcus's leg throbbed with every heartbeat, and he could feel blood soaking through his pants. He needed to set the bone, or at least stabilize it, but the idea of moving sent waves of nausea through him. Still, sitting here waiting to die wasn't an option. He was looking around for something to use as a splint when Kestra suddenly stiffened in his arms. She pointed at something behind him and said a single word that sounded like Drakish. Marcus turned, moving the light to illuminate what had caught her attention. At first, he thought it was just another wall carving, more elaborate than the others. Then the carving moved. It wasn't a carving. It was alive. The creature that detached itself from the wall was like nothing Marcus had ever seen, not in nature documentaries or science fiction films or the fevered nightmares of his worst nights. It had the general shape of a serpent, but with 6 legs that ended in claws like curved swords. Its head was triangular, almost dragon-like, with eyes that glowed with their own internal light, a deep crimson that pulsed like a heartbeat. Scales covered its body, but these scales were black as obsidian and seemed to absorb the light from Marcus's lamp rather than reflecting it. The creature was easily 15 feet long, and when it opened its mouth, Marcus saw rows of teeth that looked designed to tear through metal as easily as flesh. It made a sound, a low rumble that he felt in his chest more than heard with his ears. Kestra was absolutely still, barely breathing. Marcus didn't know if she was paralyzed by fear or if she knew something he didn't about how to survive an encounter with this thing. The creature moved closer, its movements fluid and hypnotic. The red eyes fixed on Marcus, and he had the distinct impression that it was studying him, evaluating him. Its head tilted slightly to one side, and the rumbling sound changed pitch, became almost questioning. Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He held up his free hand, palm out, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. His other arm remained wrapped protectively around Kestra. "We don't want trouble," Marcus said quietly. "We fell. Accident. We're not here to hurt anything." The creature's eyes narrowed. It took another step forward, and Marcus could see that each footfall left small scorch marks on the stone floor. Heat radiated from its body like an open furnace. Then it did something that shocked Marcus into absolute stillness. It spoke. The voice was wrong, layered and resonant, like multiple people speaking in harmony. The words were in a language Marcus didn't recognize, but somehow, impossibly, he understood the meaning behind them. "You carry the scent of fear, but not of malice. Why do you embrace the small one?" Marcus blinked, trying to process the fact that this nightmare creature was having a conversation with him. "I'm protecting her. She's a child. She's hurt and scared." The creature moved its head closer, and Marcus could feel the heat of its breath on his face. Protection, a concept the soft skins have forgotten in their climb to the stars. Interesting. And you would give your life for this small one who is not even of your species? Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. If that's what it takes. The creature pulled back slightly, and the glow in its eyes intensified. It circled around them slowly, and Marcus turned to keep it in sight, his broken legs screaming in protest. Kestra remained silent, her small body trembling against his side. You speak truth, the creature said finally. I taste no deception in your words. This is rare. The softskins who came before were full of lies and greed. They sought to take what was not theirs. They paid the price for their arrogance. I don't want anything, Marcus said. Just to keep this kid safe. If you can help us get out of here, great. If not, then just leave us alone and we'll figure something out. The creature stopped its circling and sat back on its haunches, regarding them with an expression that might have been curiosity or amusement or something else entirely. You would figure something out. With your broken body and no tools and no knowledge of these depths, you would figure something out. I've gotten out of worse situations, Marcus lied. The creature made a sound that might have been laughter, a hissing, crackling noise like a fire consuming dry wood. No, you have not. I can read your memories in the heat of your blood. You are a failure who ran from his failures. You worked metal in your home world and let your pride destroy your family. You came here seeking escape and found only more emptiness. You are nothing, Softskin. And yet, the creature leaned forward again, and its massive head came to rest inches from Marcus's face. And yet, you leaped into the dark for a child not your own. You broke your body without hesitation. You faced me, a being that could end you with a thought, and you do not beg for your life. You only ask that the small one be spared. This is the paradox of your kind. Weak and strong, foolish and brave. I have slept for 10,000 of your years, and in all that time, I have not seen such an act. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He just held Kestra and waited for whatever came next. The creature pulled back and rose to its full height. Its tail, which Marcus hadn't paid much attention to before, lifted and began to glow with the same red light as its eyes. The glow intensified until Marcus had to look away, and the temperature in the cavern rose so dramatically that he felt his skin beginning to blister. I am Draconix, last of the flame WYRMS, guardian of the sacred deep, the creature said, its voice booming and echoing off the walls. Before your kind learned to walk upright, my people ruled this world. We shaped the stone and called fire from the heart of the planet. We were gods to the ones who would become the Visharii, and we taught them the ways of honor and sacrifice. But time is cruel even to gods, and one by one, my kindred fell to age and war and the simple entropy of existence. I alone remain, sleeping in the deep, waking only when the old ways are invoked or violated. Your fall was not accident, Softskin. The ground opened because the small one approached the boundary stone with pure intent, and the old magic recognized her worthiness. But she was not ready. She would have died in the fall, and her death would have been a tragedy, for she carries the spark of greatness. You changed that. You gave your body to save hers. This is the first law of my kind, the law that most have forgotten. Sacrifice for the worthy. Protection of the small and helpless. You, who are not Visharii, have honored our law better than those who claim to follow it. The light grew brighter still, and Marcus felt something burning into his left forearm, a pain so intense that he couldn't stop the scream that tore from his throat. Kestra cried out too, and Marcus tried to shield her from the heat, but it was everywhere, passing through him like he was made of glass. Just when he thought he would catch fire, the light vanished. The temperature dropped back to merely warm. Marcus gasped for air, his heart hammering, and looked down at his arm. A mark had appeared on his forearm, burned into his skin like a brand. It was intricate and beautiful, a dragon in flight, its wings spread wide, its mouth open in what might have been a roar or a song. The mark was red and black, and it seemed to pulse with its own internal light, warm but not painful. You are marked, Draconix said, and its voice was softer now, almost gentle. You bear the sign of the Flame Guardian. It will protect you and give you strength when you need it most. It will burn away poison and heal wounds that would kill another. It will allow you to call fire when you have need. But most importantly, it will mark you as one who has earned the respect of the ancient world. The Visharii will see it and know what you have done. They will honor you, or they will reveal themselves as unworthy of the legacy they claim. Marcus stared at the mark, unable to fully process what had just happened. Kestra reached out with one small hand and gently touched the dragon design. She said something in her language, her voice full of awe. "The child speaks truth," Draconix said. "She says you are blessed by Drakish, the old word for my kind. She is wiser than most of her elders. Now, I will return you to the surface. The small one must be taken to her parents. And you must be healed properly, though the mark will do much of that work for you." The creature turned and moved toward one of the cavern walls. It placed one massive claw against the stone, and the wall simply dissolved, revealing a tunnel that sloped gently upward. Soft light filtered down from somewhere far above. "Follow the path," Draconix said. "It will take you to the surface near the dwelling places. When you emerge, tell the Visharii what happened here. Tell them that the old ways still have power. Tell them that a soft skin honored what they have forgotten. Make them remember, Marcus Dean. Make them worthy of the legacy they inherited." Marcus struggled to his feet, using the wall for support. His leg still hurt, but not as badly as before, and when he looked down, he saw that the bone had somehow set itself. The skin was still bruised and swollen, but he could put weight on it without collapsing. "Thank you," he said, looking back at Draconix. "I don't know why you did this, but thank you." "I did it because it was right," the creature said. "A concept that transcends species. Go now, and live well, Marcus Dean. You have earned a better ending than the one you were writing for yourself." Marcus picked up Kestra, settling her on his hip the way he used to carry his daughter, and began the long walk up the tunnel. Behind him, he heard Draconix settling back against the wall, becoming stone once more, returning to the long sleep. The walk took over an hour. Marcus's leg ached with every step, and his ribs sent sharp pains through his chest whenever he breathed too deeply, but he kept moving. Kestra had fallen asleep against his shoulder, exhausted by fear and shock. He could feel her small heartbeat against his chest, steady and strong. As he climbed, he had time to think about what Draconix had said. A failure who ran from his failures. That had hit home harder than he wanted to admit. He had been a welder in Seattle, a good one, and he'd had a wife and a daughter and a house with a mortgage. Then the economy crashed, and the contracts dried up, and he'd made some bad investments trying to keep things afloat. When it all came apart, instead of facing it, instead of working through it with his family, he'd taken the first off-world job offer that came along. He'd told himself it was to make money to send back, to fix things. But really, he'd just been running. For years. For years of working in mines and construction sites on frontier worlds, sending money home, but never calling, never visiting, never facing the mess he'd left behind. His daughter had turned 10 last month. He'd sent a present, some local crystal formation that probably got stuffed in a drawer and forgotten. He didn't even know if she remembered what he looked like. The mark on his arm pulsed warmly, and Marcus looked down at it. "It will mark you as one who has earned the respect of the ancient world." Draconix had given him something precious, something he hadn't earned through his work or his planning or his careful avoidance of anything that mattered. It had been given for a single moment of instinct, a split-second decision to jump into the dark for a child who needed help. Maybe that's all any of this was. Not the grand plans or the careful strategies, but the moments when you chose to act despite the fear, despite the certainty of pain, because it was the right thing to do. The tunnel opened onto the hillside about half a mile from the ceremonial grounds. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and Marcus could see crowds of Visharii gathered near the pit, along with several human workers holding emergency lights. Someone shouted when they saw him emerge from the hillside, and suddenly everyone was running toward him. Marcus set Kestra down gently as her parents reached them. The mother, her scales gleaming with tears that caught the dying light, scooped up her daughter and held her close, making sounds of distress and relief. The father approached Marcus, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Then the father did something unexpected. He dropped to one knee and bowed his head, pressing his hand over his heart in a gesture Marcus recognized as one of deepest respect. Around them, other Visharii began to do the same, a wave of bowing figures that spread through the crowd. One of the human workers, a woman named Sarah Morgan who worked in the processing plant, pushed through to Marcus's side. "What the hell happened?" she asked, her eyes wide. "You jumped into that pit. It closed up like it was never there, and we've been trying to figure out how to dig you out for the past 2 hours. How did you get out? How is the kid okay? And what is that on your arm?" Marcus looked down at the dragon mark, which was glowing softly in the twilight. "It's a long story," he said. The Visharii father rose and spoke, his voice carrying clearly despite the language barrier. An elderly Visharii stepped forward to translate, her old eyes sharp and knowing. "He says you have been marked by Drakish," the translator said. "He says the old stories are true, that the flame WYRMS still live in the deep places, and they judge those who would enter their domain. He says his daughter is alive because you honored the old law, the law of sacrifice and protection. He says you are Drakerfell, friend of fire, and all Visharii will know you as such." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under the weight of so many eyes. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. "No," the translator said, and her voice was firm. "You did what few would do. You risked everything for a child not your own, of a species not your own, for no reward but the knowledge that you acted with honor. This is what the old law demands. This is what we have forgotten in our comfort and complacency. You, human, have reminded us of who we should be." Over the next few days, as Marcus recovered in the human medical facility, word of what happened spread through the colony. The Visharii came to visit him in a steady stream, bringing gifts and offerings, asking to see the mark, telling him stories of Drakish and the old ways. The human workers treated him with a new kind of respect, though some clearly thought the whole thing was an elaborate hoax or hallucination brought on by the fall. Marcus's leg healed with remarkable speed, the fractures knitting themselves together in a matter of days instead of weeks. The doctors were baffled, running test after test, until Marcus finally told them to stop. He knew the mark was responsible. He could feel it working, a warm presence in his blood that flowed through his body and repaired damage wherever it found it. But the physical healing was nothing compared to what happened inside his mind. Lying in the hospital bed at night, staring at the ceiling, Marcus found himself thinking about his daughter, about his wife, about the life he'd abandoned because he was too afraid to face his mistakes. He could make excuses. He could say the work kept him too busy. He could say the communications lag between star systems made real conversation impossible. He could say they were better off without him. But Draconix had stripped away his ability to lie to himself. The ancient creature had looked into his soul and seen the truth. Failure who ran from his failures. Well, no more. On the 5th day after the fall, Marcus sent a message back to Earth. Not just to his wife, but to his daughter directly. He used his personal account, paying the premium rate for a video transmission, and he sat in front of the camera and told the truth. "Hi, sweetheart," he began, and his voice cracked on the words. "I know it's been a long time since you heard from me. Too long. I know I've been a lousy dad, sending presents instead of showing up, making excuses instead of trying. I want to tell you why, but there's no good reason. I was scared. I messed up, and instead of fixing it, I ran away. I told myself I was doing it for you and your mom, but really, I was just being a coward. Something happened to me this week. Something that made me realize I can't keep running. I saved a kid's life, and it nearly killed me, and I woke up with this mark on my arm that's supposed to mean I'm honorable or brave or something. But I don't feel honorable. I feel like a fraud. Because the bravest thing I could do, the thing that actually scares me more than jumping into a bottomless pit, is calling home and admitting I was wrong. So I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for missing your birthdays and your school plays and everything else. I'm sorry for leaving you and mom to deal with everything alone. I'm sorry for being selfish and weak. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you'll want to see me. But I'm coming home. My contract here ends in 2 months, and I'm not renewing it. I'm coming back to Earth, and I'm going to try to be the dad I should have been from the start. I love you, kiddo. I always have, even when I didn't show it. I hope that counts for something." He sent the message and sat back, feeling like he'd just run a marathon. The mark on his arm pulsed warmly, almost approvingly, and Marcus laughed despite himself. Even an ancient dragon spirit thought it was about time he grew up. The response came 3 weeks later, the longest 3 weeks of Marcus's life. He was working a shift in the processing facility when Sarah tapped him on the shoulder and told him he had a priority message waiting in the communications center. Marcus's hands shook as he opened the file. His daughter's face filled the screen, and she looked so much older than he remembered, her features shifting from child to young woman in a way that made his heart ache. She had her mother's eyes. "Hi, Dad," she said, and her voice was cautious but not cold. "Mom and I got your message. We listened to it like 5 times. Mom cried, and I did too, but in a good way, I think." She paused, looking off camera, then back. "I'm not going to say everything's fine, because it's not. You hurt us when you left. It really sucked. I told my friends my dad was dead because it was easier than explaining why you were on another planet and never called. Mom worked 2 jobs for a while to keep the house, and I had to grow up pretty fast. But I also saw the news stories about you. About the Visherii kid and the dragon mark and all of it. And I thought, that's my dad. That guy who jumped into a pit to save someone he didn't even know. That's my dad. And I realized I want to know that person. Not the guy who sends presents, but the guy who does something crazy because it's right. So yeah, come home, Dad. We can figure the rest out when you get here. Mom says hi, by the way. She also says you're an idiot, but she smiled when she said it, so I think that's good." The message ended with his daughter waving awkwardly at the camera, and Marcus sat in the communications center for a long time afterward, unable to move. Sarah found him there an hour later and didn't ask questions, just sat with him until he was ready to leave. The next 2 months passed in a blur of work and preparation. The Visherii held a formal ceremony to honor Marcus, declaring him an eternal friend of their people and granting him privileges that even they admitted were purely ceremonial, but deeply meaningful. They gave him a small sculpture of a dragon, carved from volcanic glass, that caught the light and seemed to glow from within. The human colony administrator, a tired man named Blake Turner who usually had no patience for ceremonies or sentiment, pulled Marcus aside before the event. "I've been doing this job for 8 years, Blake said. "I've seen hundreds of workers come through here. Most of them are running from something. Debt, family, the law, themselves. I never asked because it's not my business. But you're the first one I've seen stop running and turn around." He shook Marcus's hand, a firm grip that said more than words could. "Whatever happens back on Earth, you should be proud of what you did here. You saved a life and reminded an entire species about their values. That's a hell of a legacy for a guy who thought he was nobody." The day Marcus boarded the transport ship back to Earth, half the colony turned out to see him off. The Visherii filled one entire section of the spaceport, their scales gleaming in the artificial lights, and they sang a traditional blessing song in their chiming voices. Kestra was there with her parents, and she ran up to Marcus and hugged his leg, then pressed a small stone into his hand. The translator explained. "She says this is from the ceremonial ground, from before the pit opened. She wants you to have it, so you remember that sometimes falling is the only way to rise." Marcus knelt down, his healed legs supporting his weight without pain, and hugged the small Visherii child. "You be good, okay?" he said. "And if you ever need anything, you tell your parents to contact me. I'll come back if you need me." Kestra nodded solemnly, then said something in her language that made the adults around her laugh. The translator smiled. "She says you are her second father, her Drakerfell protector, and when she grows up, she will jump into pits to save children too." The journey back to Earth took 6 weeks in suspended animation, but Marcus didn't mind. He slept without nightmares for the first time in years, and when he woke in orbit around the blue-green planet he'd left behind, he felt ready. Not confident, not certain, but ready. The mark on his arm had faded to a pale scar, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, but he could still feel its warmth. Draconix's gift wasn't just physical healing or the ability to call fire, though Marcus had discovered he could do that in moments of stress, summoning small flames that danced in his palm and dissipated without burning him. The real gift was the certainty that he had value, that his actions mattered, that one moment of courage could change everything. He took a shuttle down to Seattle, watching the city grow larger through the viewport. It looked different than he remembered, or maybe he was the one who'd changed. The buildings seemed smaller, less intimidating. The crowds of people moving through the streets looked like opportunities for connection rather than threats to be avoided. His wife had agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near what used to be their house. Neutral ground, she'd called it in her message. Smart. Marcus didn't blame her for being cautious. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee steaming in front of her. She looked older too, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, but still beautiful. Still the woman he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. "Hi, Lauren," Marcus said, and suddenly all his prepared speeches evaporated. "I don't know where to start." Lauren looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she gestured to the chair across from her. "Start by sitting down. Then tell me about the dragon." So he did. He told her everything, from the festival to the fall to Draconix's words to the mark that had changed his life. He told her about the nights in the hospital, staring at the ceiling and realizing what a fool he'd been. He told her about the message he'd sent to their daughter, and the response that had given him hope. Lauren listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. When he finished, she was quiet for a while. "You always had it in you," she said finally. "The jumping into danger part. You remember when we first met? You pulled that kid out of the lake at the park, the one who'd fallen through the ice. You nearly drowned doing it, but you didn't hesitate. I thought, this is a guy who acts when it matters. This is someone I want in my life." She paused, and her eyes met his. "Then you stopped acting. When things got hard, when the business failed and the debts piled up, you froze. You couldn't figure out how to fix it, so you decided the best thing was to just leave. And that hurt more than the money problems, Marcus. That hurt more than anything. Because I needed you to jump into the pit with me, and instead, you ran away." Marcus felt the words like physical blows, but he didn't look away. "I know," he said. "You're right, and I can't undo it. I can't give you back those 4 years. All I can do is promise I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore. Whatever happens, whether you give me another chance or not, I'm staying. I'm going to be in our daughter's life. I'm going to fix what I can fix and live with what I can't. That's all I've got." Lauren's expression softened slightly. "The dragon mark," she said. "Can I see it?" Marcus rolled up his sleeve, revealing the faded scar. Lauren reached out and traced the design with one finger, her touch gentle. "It's beautiful," she said. "And the fact that you earned it by saving someone else's kid while our own daughter was growing up without you. That's pretty ironic, isn't it?" "Yeah," Marcus admitted. "It is. But it taught me something. It taught me that courage isn't just about the big moments, the dramatic rescues. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard, even when you're scared. It's about facing the people you've hurt and trying to do better." Lauren withdrew her hand and sat back. "I can't promise you we'll get back what we had," she said. "Too much has happened. Too much time has passed. But I'm willing to try. For Emma's sake, if nothing else. She needs her father, and despite everything, I think you can be that person. I saw it in that video message you sent her. I saw the guy I used to know. That's all I'm asking for," Marcus said. "A chance to try." They talked for another 2 hours, working through the practical details. Marcus would get his own place initially, a small apartment near their house. He would see Emma twice a week at first, building up trust and routine. He would start paying off the old debts, which Lauren had been managing all this time. He would go to counseling, both individual and eventually couple sessions if Lauren decided she was open to that. It was fragile and uncertain and scary, but it was real. It was the hard work of rebuilding instead of the easy escape of running. And Marcus found himself grateful for every difficult conversation, every awkward silence, every moment where he had to sit with his failures instead of fleeing from them. Emma came to dinner at Lauren's house that first week. She was shy at first, hanging back in the doorway, but when she saw the dragon sculpture Marcus had brought, her eyes lit up. "Is that from the aliens?" she asked. "The ones from the news stories." "Yeah," Marcus said. "The Visherii gave it to me. And Kestra, the kid I pulled out of the pit, she gave me this." He showed her the stone Kestra had pressed into his hand at the spaceport. Emma took it carefully, turning it over in her hands. "It's warm," she said, surprised. "The Visherii believe stones remember important moments," Marcus explained. "This one remembers the day someone decided to stop being afraid and do something that mattered." Emma looked up at him, and Marcus saw understanding in her eyes that went beyond her years. "Is that why you came back? Because you stopped being afraid?" "No," Marcus said honestly. "I'm still afraid. Terrified, actually. But I came back anyway. Because I learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are." Emma nodded slowly, then held out the stone. You should keep this, she said. To remember. How about we share it? Marcus suggested. You keep it this week, and next time I see you, I'll take it for a week. That way, we both remember. Emma smiled, a tentative thing, but genuine. Okay, she said. Deal. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, carefully, Marcus rebuilt his life. He got a job at a shipyard, welding hull plates on atmospheric shuttles. The work was hard and honest, and he was good at it. His supervisor noticed the dragon mark one day and asked about it, and Marcus told the story. Word spread, and soon he was something of a minor celebrity in the yard, the guy who'd been marked by an alien dragon god. But Marcus didn't let it go to his head. Every morning, he looked at the faded scar on his arm and remembered Draconix's words. You are nothing, Softskin. And yet, the paradox of humanity, weak and strong, foolish and brave. He took Emma to the aquarium and taught her about Earth's oceans, the ones she'd never seen because he'd been too far away. He helped Lauren fix the leaking roof on the house, working alongside her in comfortable silence that slowly became comfortable conversation. He went to therapy and confronted the depression and anxiety he'd been running from for years. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and arguments and days when he wondered if he was fooling himself, if he really could change. But then Emma would laugh at one of his terrible jokes, or Lauren would smile at him across the dinner table, or he'd finish a difficult weld and feel the satisfaction of work done well, and he'd remember why he was doing this. 6 months after returning to Earth, Marcus was working late at the shipyard when his communicator buzzed with an incoming long-distance message. He almost ignored it, figuring it was spam or a wrong number, but something made him check. The message was from the Visharii colony on Vesher 3. A brief text communication followed by a video file. Marcus opened the text first. Marcus Dean, Drakerfell, friend of fire. We hope this message finds you well on your homeworld. We wish to inform you that Kestra has been asking about you constantly. She tells everyone about her human protector and shows them the matching stone she carries. We have decided to establish an exchange program, allowing young Visharii to study on Earth and young humans to study on Vesher 3. Kestra will be in the first group, arriving in 3 months. We hope you will agree to be her sponsor and guide during her time on your world. She trusts you, and so do we. Marcus stared at the message, his heart swelling with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He opened the video file and saw Kestra, bigger now but still recognizable, her scales gleaming in the alien sunlight. She waved at the camera and spoke in her chiming language, and subtitles appeared at the bottom of the screen. Hello, Marcus Draker. I am learning your language so we can talk when I come to Earth. I want to see your daughter Emma. I want to see your world. I want to learn to be brave like you. Please say yes. Please be my guide. I miss my second father. The video ended, and Marcus sat in the empty shipyard, his eyes burning with tears he didn't bother to hide. He thought about everything that had happened, all the choices and chances and changes that had brought him to this moment. A year ago, he'd been a hollow man going through motions, convinced he had nothing to offer anyone. Now he had a daughter who was learning to trust him again, a wife who was willing to try, a job he could be proud of, and an alien child calling him father across the vast distances of space. He activated his communicator and recorded a response. Hi, Kestra. Of course I'll be your guide. I can't wait to see you again. Earth has a lot to show you, and I think you're going to love it here. Emma is excited to meet you. I've told her all about you. We're going to have amazing adventures together. See you in 3 months, kiddo. He sent the message and leaned back in his chair, looking at the dragon mark on his arm. It was glowing faintly, just a soft pulse of warmth against his skin. Marcus smiled and spoke to the ancient presence he sometimes felt stirring within the mark. I think I'm figuring it out, he said to Draconix, wherever the creature slept in the deep places of a distant world. The paradox. We're small and scared, but we show up anyway. We fail and we run, but then we turn around and face what we've done. We're broken, but we keep trying to fix ourselves and each other. That's what makes us human. Not the strength or the technology or the reaching for the stars. It's the trying. It's the jumping into the pit, even when we know it'll hurt. The mark pulsed once more, warmer than before, and Marcus could have sworn he heard a distant voice carried on no wind, approving and amused. Well spoken, Marcus Dean. Live well. Protect those who need protection. And remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. Marcus stood, gathered his tools, and headed for the door. He had to get home. Lauren was making dinner, and Emma wanted help with her homework, and he had a message to send to the Visharii embassy about sponsoring an exchange student. He had a life to live, fully present and engaged, no longer running from his failures, but building on them, learning from them, transforming them into something better. He stepped out into the Seattle evening, the city lights spreading before him like a constellation of possibilities, and Marcus Dean, welder and father and friend of fire, walked toward the future he was finally brave enough to embrace. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.